When my brother died, it didn't rain like it was supposed to. It was bright, obscenely bright for a funeral. The kind of day that makes you squint and wish for clouds just to feel like the world understands your mood. I stood under that unrelenting sunlight, holding a bouquet of lilies that wilted before the priest even said his name. Ethan had always been the one who drew attention, even in death. People filled the church like he was a celebrity. Everyone wanted to shake my hand, tell me how sorry they were, how good of a man he'd been, how tragic it all was. But their words felt like white noise. Because when I looked at the casket, all I could think about was how wrong it felt that I was the one still breathing. And then there was Claire. She looked composed, too composed. Her eyes were swollen but dry, her black dress crisp and unwrinkled. She thanked everyone with the kind of politeness you use when you're on autopilot, when you're trying to keep from collapsing. We barely spoke that day, just a polite hug that lingered 1 second too long. It wasn't until a week later that she called me. "Daniel," she said, her voice small over the phone, "I need a favor." That's how it began. Claire had nowhere to go, she explained. Ethan's insurance payout was delayed due to an investigation, and the house they'd shared was under bank review. She said she'd only need a few weeks, just until she got things sorted. I hesitated, staring at the half-empty beer on my counter, then told her yes. What else was I supposed to do? Say no to my dead brother's wife? The day she moved in, the house felt different, colder. I helped her carry boxes in from the back of a borrowed SUV. She'd packed light, clothes, toiletries, a framed wedding photo, and a single duffel bag she kept close, like it held her last tether to him. "Thank you again," she said as we set the final box down. "I'll be out of your hair soon." "Take your time," I replied. "I'm not exactly booked solid these days." She gave a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. For the first few nights, things were quiet. She stayed mostly in the guest room, cooked small dinners for two, left polite notes if she went out. I started to believe it would be fine, two lonely people trying to survive the silence Ethan left behind. But grief has a way of fermenting in a house. It seeps into the walls, curdles in the air. I'd wake up some nights to the sound of the floor creaking in the hallway, the faint whisper of someone talking to themselves. Once, I thought I heard her crying. Another time, laughing. And then one morning, while making coffee, I noticed something on the kitchen counter, something I hadn't seen since the accident. A cracked iPhone charger, the exact model Ethan used. I stared at it, the coffee machine hissing behind me, and for the first time since he died, I felt that sharp, impossible question twist back into my chest. What if he hadn't really left? The phone wasn't there yet, but the shadow of it was. And with it came the feeling that my house wasn't just housing grief anymore, it was hiding something. That thought followed me into the next night, when I heard Claire whispering behind her door. It was past midnight when I heard it again, the sound of Claire's voice, low and uneven, bleeding through the thin walls. I froze halfway down the hall, my hand still gripping the bathroom doorframe. At first I thought she was talking in her sleep, but then I caught the rhythm, pauses, murmurs, a sharp intake of breath. She was arguing. I inched closer until I could make out fragments. "I told you, it wasn't supposed to happen like that." A pause. "No, don't call me again, just do." The floor creaked beneath me, and the whispering stopped. I darted back to my room, closing the door quietly enough to convince myself she hadn't heard. My heart was beating too fast, the sound of it drowning out reason. There could have been 100 explanations, grief, guilt, drunk dialing, but none of them felt right. The tone in her voice hadn't been sorrow. It was fear. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen, dressed, hair tied back neatly. The smell of eggs and coffee filled the air, like we were a normal pair of roommates and not two ghosts orbiting the same grief. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. I hesitated before answering. "You were up late too." She froze just long enough for me to notice. "Yeah," she said lightly, forcing a smile. Couldn't shut my brain off. We ate in silence. I caught her glancing at the phone on the counter, her phone, or at least the one I thought was hers. It wasn't cracked like Ethan's had been, and yet I couldn't shake the image of that old charger sitting there the night before, like an artifact she'd forgotten to hide. By the third day, the rhythm of her behavior shifted. She started keeping her door locked when she left, double-checking windows, flinching at unexpected noises. When I asked if everything was all right, she just said, "Of course," in that clipped way people do when they're lying. That evening, I decided to take the trash out before bed. As I passed her car, I noticed something. Mud streaked across the bumper, fresh and uneven, like she'd driven somewhere rural. The same night she'd been whispering. Back inside, I sat in the dark living room, waiting for her to come home. She arrived around midnight, headlights sweeping across the wall like a flash of interrogation light. I pretended to be half asleep on the couch when she walked in. "Oh," she said softly, startled. "Did I wake you?" "Nah," I murmured, "just couldn't sleep." She nodded, clutching that same leather purse close to her side. "You should try warm milk. Works for me." "Maybe I'll try that," I said, watching her retreat down the hallway. The door clicked shut. Then another click, the lock. I sat there another 10 minutes before getting up. The silence in the house felt loaded, like it was holding its breath. I approached her door slowly, pressing my ear against the wood. No whispering this time. Just the faint buzz of a phone vibrating on the other side. I turned away, ready to go back to bed, until I noticed something glinting in the hallway light. Her purse, sitting on the chair by the wall. For the first time, she'd forgotten to take it with her. I reached for the purse, my hands trembling, not out of curiosity, but the kind of dread that already knows it's about to find something it shouldn't. My hands hovered over the purse like it was something alive. I told myself I was just making sure she hadn't left anything dangerous in there, like medication or maybe a gun. But the truth was uglier. I wanted answers. The leather felt warm, like she'd been holding it moments before. I unzipped it slowly, the sound sharp in the quiet hallway. Inside, I saw the usual clutter: a small wallet, lipstick, receipts, a folded photo of her and Ethan at the lake. I almost stopped there. Almost. Then I saw it, the cracked screen. The same spiderweb pattern that had once run across my brother's phone. Ethan's phone. I froze, my stomach dropped through the floor. For a full minute I just stared at it, half convinced it would buzz to life on its own. Finally, I reached in and pulled it out. The power button gave a weak vibration but didn't light up. Dead battery. Every rational thought told me to put it back and pretend I hadn't seen it. But another part of me, the part that had been haunted by too many sleepless nights, took over. I slipped the phone into my hoodie pocket and zipped the purse back shut, arranging everything exactly as it was. Then I tiptoed back to my room, heart thudding in my throat. I rummaged through my drawers until I found the same charger I'd noticed on the counter days before. The connector slid in perfectly. My pulse jumped when the screen flickered, showing the Apple logo for a brief moment before dimming again. When the home screen finally appeared, I felt that eerie, guilty thrill you get before crossing a moral line. His wallpaper was still the same, him and Claire, smiling under sunlight. I almost unplugged it right there. But curiosity, or something darker, pushed me further. The messages were old, weeks before the crash, but a few caught my eye. A contact saved only as M. Their conversation was tense. M typed, "You said you'd handle it." Ethan types back, "I'm not doing this anymore." M types, "Then she will." My throat went dry. There were also a few voice memos, each only a few seconds long. I clicked one. Static. Another just breathing, then Ethan's voice. "If anything happens, check the garage." Before I could play the next, I heard movement in the hall. Claire's door creaked open. I yanked the charger out, shoved the phone under my pillow, and killed the lamp. The sound of her footsteps drew closer, slow and deliberate. She stopped right outside my door. "Daniel," her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "You awake?" I forced myself to sound groggy. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." A pause, then "Me neither." She lingered for a few seconds, then walked away. The faint sound of her door locking echoed down the hall. I waited another minute before exhaling. The phone buzzed once in my hand, one last notification lighting up the cracked screen. "Unknown number, don't trust her." I stared at the message until it faded, my reflection staring back from the shattered glass, wondering if the warning had come too late. I stared at the message until it faded, my reflection staring back from the shattered glass, wondering if the warning had come too late. The next morning, Claire was gone before sunrise. Her car keys were missing from the hook, and the kitchen smelled faintly of her perfume, that cold lavender scent that somehow made the air feel sterile. I sat at the table with Ethan's phone, the cracked glass catching the light. I hadn't slept. The message from the unknown number still glowed in my mind, looping like a warning siren I couldn't turn off. I told myself I was just trying to find closure, that maybe this phone held something that could explain why my brother's car veered off the bridge that night. But deep down, I knew I was already in too deep. When I unlocked the phone again, I noticed something new in the voice memo app, a file I hadn't opened. It was timestamped the night of the crash. The file name was a single word: Claire. I hit play. At first there was only the hiss of wind, then Ethan's voice, shaky and urgent. "Claire, please just stop the car. We can fix this. You don't have to." A loud scrape, tires screeching, the sound of someone crying or laughing, it was hard to tell. Then a muffled voice, faint but unmistakable: "Claire. You should have let me handle it, Ethan." Then the crash. I flinched and hit pause. The silence that followed was worse than the recording itself. I could still hear the echo of metal twisting, the gasp before impact. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred. My brother hadn't fallen asleep at the wheel like the police claimed. He'd been fighting for his life. And Claire had been there. My first instinct was to call the police, but what could I tell them? That I'd broken into her purse and found a phone that shouldn't exist, that my dead brother had recorded his own death. They'd dismiss it, or worse, tell her I'd accused her. I needed proof, more than a corrupted voice memo and a bad feeling. When I checked the phone's photo gallery, I saw a folder marked hidden. Inside were a handful of pictures. Most were mundane receipts, the car, a stretch of forest road. But the last one made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Claire standing beside a man I didn't recognize, the same cracked guardrail behind them. The timestamp, 2 hours before the crash. I zoomed in on the man's jacket, a patch with a name partially visible: Mason. Yem, the mysterious contact, the person from the messages. I was shaking now, the phone slick in my grip. Everything pointed toward her, but the edges didn't line up. If she'd killed Ethan, why live here? Why keep his phone? Why risk everything? I didn't hear her come in until the floor creaked behind me. "Daniel." I jumped, nearly dropping the phone. She stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag, eyes fixed on my hand. Her expression flickered, shock, then something colder. "I didn't know you still had one of Ethan's phones," she said slowly. My mouth went dry. "Yeah," I lied, "found it in a drawer." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's strange. They told me everything was recovered from the crash site." The bag hit the floor, a carton of eggs bursting open. Her gaze locked onto me, and I knew she knew. That night, I packed a bag and moved the phone to a safer place. Because if Claire was capable of what I thought she was, I wasn't sure I'd make it to morning. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Every creak in the floor, every groan from the pipes sounded like her footsteps. I left my bedroom lamp on and stared at the ceiling until dawn bled pale light through the blinds. By then, I'd already made up my mind. Ethan's voice in that recording had said one thing clearly: check the garage. Claire left mid-morning, claiming she had an appointment with a financial advisor. Her tone was almost casual, but her eyes lingered on me a second too long. When the door closed behind her, I waited until I heard her car disappear down the street before I moved. The air in the garage was heavy with the smell of motor oil and dust. It had always been a storage space: Ethan's tools, my old bike, boxes labeled Christmas and taxes. Nothing unusual. But when I moved a stack of crates by the back wall, I noticed something off. The concrete there was newer, smoother, brighter than the rest. I crouched and knocked on it. The sound was dull, hollow. My pulse hammered. I grabbed a crowbar from the workbench and pried at the edge. After a few minutes of scraping and sweating, the edge of a small metal box appeared beneath the cement layer, like something intentionally hidden. I pulled it free. Inside were papers, insurance forms, photos, a USB drive, and a folded note in Ethan's handwriting. If you're reading this, I didn't crash. Someone made sure I wouldn't walk away. It's about the policy. Don't trust Claire, don't trust Mason. E. My throat went dry. Everything I'd suspected was real. I fumbled for the USB drive, plugged it into my laptop on the workbench, and opened the single file on it, a folder of images. Most were scans of documents, life insurance policies naming Claire as the sole beneficiary, but the signature on Ethan's line didn't match his handwriting. Someone had forged it. A sound outside froze me, a car door closing. She was back early. I yanked the USB out and shoved it into my pocket, quickly pushing the box back under the crates. The garage door opened slowly, sunlight slicing through the dust. "Daniel," she called, her tone sugary but tight. "You out here?" I forced my voice steady. "Yeah, just looking for a wrench." She stepped inside, the heels of her boots clicking against the floor. Her eyes darted to the disturbed crates. "You've been busy." "Just cleaning up," I said. She smiled faintly. "You never were good at lying." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she picked up a rag from the table, turned it over in her hands, and said, "You shouldn't dig into things that don't belong to you. It's dangerous." There was no pretense left in her tone. It was a warning. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She gave me one last, hollow look before leaving the garage. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the tools on the wall. I waited until her footsteps faded, then exhaled. My hand brushed against the USB in my pocket. It felt heavier than before. That night, I drove to the edge of town with the USB in my jacket, determined to find out who Mason was and whether he was still alive. The road out of town looked endless at night, a ribbon of asphalt unraveling into fog. I drove until the last streetlight disappeared in the rearview mirror, and the only sound was the thrum of tires beneath me. My GPS barely registered the route, just a cluster of coordinates Ethan had texted himself weeks before he died. They led to an auto repair shop on the edge of the county. The sign out front was rusted, the words barely visible: Mason's Garage. I killed the engine and sat in the dark for a minute, watching the dim light seeping through the shop windows. Someone was still inside. When I pushed open the door, a bell chimed, and a man looked up from beneath the hood of a car. Mid-40s, grease on his hands, eyes sharp even under fatigue. "You lost?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, forcing a smile. "You Mason?" "Who's asking?" "I'm Ethan's brother." The wrench in his hand clattered to the floor. For a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, guilt, maybe both. He wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Didn't know Ethan had family still around." "Yeah, I didn't know he had friends here either." He gave a short laugh, hollow and defensive. "Wasn't much of a friend." I reached into my jacket and slid a photo across the counter, the one from Ethan's phone. Him and Claire, standing beside that same broken guardrail, Mason's face drained of color. "Where was this taken?" I asked. He stared at it for a long time before answering. She said she deleted that. So it's true, I said quietly. You were there. He rubbed his jaw, eyes darting toward the door like he was calculating escape routes. You don't understand. Ethan found out about the insurance thing. He was gonna go to the cops. Claire panicked, said she'd talk him down. I followed to make sure she didn't do something stupid. Did she? His silence was answer enough. She said it was an accident, he muttered finally. But I saw the look on her face when she drove off that bridge. She wanted him gone. I tried to pull her out after, but the car was already in flames. I felt sick. My brother's death had a witness, and that witness had kept quiet for months. Why didn't you say anything? I demanded. Because she said she'd pin it on me, Mason snapped. She's smarter than people think, got friends in places. You think you're the first person she's fooled. I opened my mouth to reply, but headlights washed across the garage windows. Mason's face went white. That's her, he whispered. You shouldn't have come here. A door slammed outside. My pulse spiked. He shoved a small envelope into my hand. Take this. It's everything. Just go. What about you? He didn't answer. I turned and ran for the back exit, the crunch of gravel behind me. As I reached my car, I heard shouting, and then the unmistakable crack of a gunshot. I drove until the town disappeared behind me, the envelope still clutched in my hand, and the echo of that single gunshot chasing me into the dark. I didn't stop driving until I hit the outskirts of the next county, pulling into a deserted gas station lit by a single flickering bulb. My hands were shaking as I killed the engine. Mason was dead, or close enough that I couldn't pretend otherwise, and Claire had followed me there. The envelope Mason had shoved into my hand was bent and smudged with oil. Inside were a handful of papers, a flash drive, and a single handwritten note. If she finds out you have this, run. The flash drive was small, old, like something from a decade ago. I grabbed my laptop from the passenger seat and plugged it in, praying it still worked. A folder opened automatically, insurance proof. It wasn't just one policy. There were several, each with a different name, all tied back to the same account under Claire's maiden name. Her husband wasn't the first. Ethan had been number 4. Each policy followed a pattern: whirlwind relationship, sudden tragedy, payout, millions. I felt cold all over. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me needed to hear another human voice. Daniel, it was Claire's voice, calm, soft, deliberate. Where Mason? I asked. She didn't answer right away, just a faint exhale. You shouldn't have gone there. Did you kill him too? You make it sound so dramatic, she said. He made a choice, so did Ethan, and now so have you. The line went dead. I looked around the empty station, the silence pressing in from every side. There was a payphone by the door, ancient but still functional. I picked up the receiver and dialed 911, but before the call could connect, headlights swept across the lot. Her car. I ducked behind the pumps, heart pounding, watching as she stepped out. Black coat, no hesitation. She moved like someone who'd done this before. The phone in my pocket buzzed again, a new message flashing on screen. Unknown number. You can't hide forever, Daniel. I clutched the flash drive tighter. I couldn't call the cops here, not yet. She'd claim I was delusional, paranoid. Maybe even violent. The kind of man grieving himself into madness. She'd rehearsed this story before, she'd perfected it. So I waited, crouched in the dark as her footsteps circled the lot. Then she stopped near my car. The sound of metal scraping, the trunk opening. My stomach turned. She was searching for the envelope. I slipped out the back, boots crunching on gravel, praying the night would swallow me whole. I didn't look back until I reached the woods beyond the station. When I did, I saw her standing by my car, face lit by her phone screen, smiling. She found the laptop I left behind. I ran deeper into the trees, clutching Mason's envelope like a lifeline. The cold air burned my lungs, but I didn't stop. Not until the woods opened onto an old service road and a distant farmhouse came into view, a faint orange light glowing through the window. Maybe someone was awake. Maybe I wasn't completely alone. I stumbled toward that light, praying whoever lived there would listen before Claire found me again. The farmhouse looked abandoned up close, paint peeling, windows fogged, a porch sagging under years of neglect. Still, a dim orange glow flickered through the curtains, steady and warm like a heartbeat. I knocked once. No answer. Then again, louder. Finally, a latch clicked and the door opened just enough for an older man to peer through. His eyes narrowed. "You lost, son." "Please," I said, out of breath. "I just need somewhere to call the police. Someone after me." He studied me for a long second, then opened the door wider. "Inside, quick." The warmth hit me first. Wood stove, old books, coffee grounds. I sank into a chair while he locked the door behind us. He had the look of someone who'd spent too long alone. Weathered face, calm eyes, no wasted movement. "Name's Ellis," he said. "You said someone after you." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to lie, but exhaustion won. "My brother was killed. His wife Claire, she's not who she says she is. She followed me from town. She might have." Ellis held up a hand. "Slow down, breathe." I slid the envelope across the table. "Proof. Insurance fraud may be worse. People have died." He opened it carefully, scanning the documents. His brow furrowed. "These signatures, hell, this is federal-level fraud. You go to the cops with this." "She'll bury me before I can," I said. "She's already." Headlights swept across the far window. I froze. Ellis moved fast, snuffing the lamp and pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek. "Black sedan," he murmured. "Stopped at the fence." My pulse thundered. "She found me." "Basement," he said, grabbing a shotgun from behind the door. "Go now." I didn't argue. I slipped down a narrow set of stairs into a cold, damp cellar. Shelves of canned peaches lined one wall. The air smelled like earth and rust. I crouched behind an old boiler, clutching the flash drive like it was a weapon. Upstairs, I heard the door creak open. Then Claire's voice, calm as ever. "Evening. My husband's brother ran off, said he might have come this way." Ellis's voice was steady. "No one been here all night." "Mind if I look?" Silence, then the faint metallic click of the shotgun being cocked. "I mind plenty." My breath caught. For a second I thought she'd leave. Then came the sound of a struggle, furniture scraping, something heavy falling. A single gunshot thundered through the floorboards, followed by silence. I didn't move, not for a full minute. Then footsteps, slow, careful, descending the stairs. A shadow spread across the wall before I saw her face. Calm, unreadable. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice echoing in the stillness. "You never should have opened that envelope." Her hand gleamed with the faint outline of a pistol. There was nowhere to run. I glanced past her, spotting the small basement window cracked open above the shelves, and the faintest flicker of police sirens somewhere far off in the distance. Claire's shadow loomed larger as she stepped off the final stair. The faint light from the basement window caught the gun in her hand, sleek, black, steady. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo off the concrete walls. "Don't do this," I said. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. Her eyes glimmered, cool, detached. "You shouldn't have gone looking. You don't understand what he was involved in." "I understand enough," I said. "Ethan wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve what you did." She tilted her head, almost pitying. "You think I wanted that night to happen? He threatened to expose everything, to ruin me. You don't survive people like him by playing fair." My breath hitched. "You killed him for money." Her mouth twitched, not a smile, not a frown, just something that said she was done pretending. "For freedom. Money just keeps it quiet." I inched toward the shelves, pretending to steady myself. "You didn't have to kill Mason." "He was sloppy," she said simply. He told you things he should have known better. The way she said it, like taking out the trash. Outside, faint sirens grew louder. She heard them too, her gaze flicked toward the sound, calculating. You called the cops. I shook my head, didn't have to. She took a slow step closer, raising the gun. Then I guess we're out of time. I acted on instinct. I hurled one of the glass jars from the shelf, pickled peaches bursting across the floor. She flinched just long enough for me to dive behind the boiler. The gun fired once, the sound deafening in the small space. Metal rang. Something grazed my arm, burning shallow. I crawled toward the window, pulling myself up by the ledge. The frame was small, barely wide enough for my shoulders, but it was all I had. Daniel, she called, her voice echoing off the stone. If you run, they'll never find your body. I shoved the flash drive into my pocket and forced myself through. The glass scraped my back, tearing fabric, but I was out, landing hard in the dirt behind the farmhouse. A second gunshot tore through the wood above me. I didn't look back. I sprinted across the field toward the tree line, lungs screaming, the sirens swelling closer now, blue and red lights flickering at the edge of the road. Behind me, Claire emerged from the basement, gun still in hand, hair whipping in the cold wind. She looked like something carved out of fury and steel. For a second, our eyes met across the field. Then she turned and ran in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness before the first police car screeched to a stop by the fence. I collapsed in the grass, blood soaking through my sleeve, the flash drive still clenched in my fist. An officer's voice shouted orders, radio static, boots pounding, and I realized, for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one chasing ghosts. But even as they pulled me to my feet, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done. Claire never left things unfinished. At the hospital later that night, when the detective handed me back my recovered phone, it buzzed once, an unknown number flashing a single message that made my blood run cold. You shouldn't have survived, Daniel. The hospital room was too quiet. Even with the hum of machines and the slow beep of the monitor beside my bed, it felt like silence was pressing down on me. The painkillers dulled the sting in my arm but did nothing for the unease crawling beneath my skin. Every shadow looked like her silhouette. Every sound felt like the start of another ending. The detectives had come and gone hours ago. They took the flash drive, my statement, the photos from Ethan's phone. They promised to handle it. I'd heard that tone before, the kind they used for messy cases that would take months to go nowhere. Claire was still missing. Her car had been found abandoned 2 counties away, the interior wiped clean. No prints, no weapon, no sign of Mason's body either, just tire tracks that vanished into the woods. They called it an ongoing investigation. I called it unfinished business. A nurse came in to check my IV. You should rest, she said kindly. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky, that word again. I nodded, but when she left, I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I just stared at the ceiling until the clock hit midnight. That's when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, miss me. My chest tightened. I waited for another message, but none came, just that one mocking. I hit record on my phone's camera, lifted it toward the window, and whispered, "You're not going to win again." Outside, the parking lot glowed under fluorescent lights. Empty. Still. I told myself the phone was a sick prank, maybe from some automated burner, but then another buzz. Voice message, 0004 seconds. Hands shaking, I pressed play. There was static, then a low hum, and then faintly Ethan's voice. Run. The same word he'd left on his phone weeks ago. The same tone, desperate, final. My blood ran cold. Ethan was dead. I'd seen his body. The police had confirmed it, so how? The screen went black for a second, then flashed again. The message replayed itself automatically, distorted this time, the voice glitching between Ethan's and something else. Claire. Run. You can't run. I threw the phone across the bed. It hit the floor with a dull thud. The hallway light flickered once, twice. The overhead monitor beeped rapidly, as if picking up my panic. And somewhere down the corridor, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, out of sync with the usual hospital rhythm. I pulled myself upright, ignoring the pain, every muscle screaming to move. The door handle rattled, once, then stopped. I waited, breath shallow, until the footsteps faded. When I finally got the courage to look outside, the hall was empty. Only a small folded note on the floor. No one had seen anyone deliver it. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The paper smelled faintly of lavender, Claire's perfume. You still have something that belongs to me. I looked down at my jacket folded on the chair. The inner pocket bulged slightly, the flash drive. The police hadn't taken the backup Mason gave me. Somehow, I'd forgotten it was still there. The lights flickered again. A voice crackled faintly through the intercom at the nurse's station, distorted but unmistakable. Room 214. He's awake. That was my room. I grabbed my jacket, heart racing, and limped toward the stairwell instead of the elevator. Each step felt heavier, the echo of Ethan's voice still looping in my mind. Run! Outside, the night air hit cold against my face. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, but this time I didn't know if they were coming for me or her. I started walking toward the streetlights, not looking back. Because maybe the truth doesn't end when the bad guy disappears. Maybe it just waits, quietly, patiently, for the next person foolish enough to dig it up again.